Hello everyone and welcome to my brand new Magicka Sorcerer build. So I've recently released the build Shocket Launcher. That is basically an overload gank. I've taken some of the ideas around that gank and applied it to a real, sustained, proper open world scenario build. So now it's properly playing itself rather than solely being a gank and having a bit of sustain to escape, but mostly really just being about the one-shot kill. This build, super high burst. And it's using a combo that I personally have not seen yet. I'm not going to claim I'm the only one. I'm going to be making a video, by the way, brief off topic here, about the odds of somebody copying a build. Because I'm told no matter what I make, apparently I've copied someone. I'm going to make a video. I did like a maths of the ESO before anyway. Basically about the maths, the chance of somebody copying up to 50% of a build accidentally. I reckon it's going to be less than a millionth percent chance to make a unique build, but we'll see. We'll make some unique stuff there. Anyway, the build that we're on today, we've nicknamed this Electrocutioner. This build has the big boy burst, and it's not your typical big boy burst combo on sorcs. I think I found the way around frags, basically, and this build is playing really smoothly. Quick, obviously, counters. We're on a sorc, so generally speaking, if you're against Crystal Shield or Reflect, it's obviously going to be tough. Not impossible, you just need to play in a slightly different fashion. Maybe someday I'll make a video explaining how to fight against those sort of reflects, because they are a difficult scenario for a lot of people and it does take practice. But yeah, the build itself is really good. I don't consider myself the best sorc, and I'm destroying on this. I'm going to release a 1vx video on it as soon as I can. Today, when I made this clip, I've already got about 6 or 7 clips today alone, so it shouldn't take too long, and then I'll do all the editing and that fancy palaver at some point. But anyway, you're probably bored of me talking. Let's talk about the sets. So this build is a pet based build, but the burst is not based on your pets and you're not using frag. Neither of those skills are really essential to your burst. They're just there in the Twilight's case as your heal and in the Volatile's case as your stun. I'll explain it all in a second. Patience, it's complicated. I promise you it's phenomenally good, and again, you can catch it all on the stream. Sets. We are running with 1 Doma House for the Magicka and Stamina. Your pets scale on Magicka damage. Your shields scale on Magicka damage. You're getting a bucket load of Stamina for free. Job's a good one. I like it. Before I go on, all of my pieces are Impen. I did try this in Infused Divines. I much prefer Impen. I think it's much nicer. It does give you like 1.5k extra Magicka, but when you outweigh it against the crit and the chance of surviving when your shields are down, I much prefer the Impen. It was a big difference, to be honest. Shoulders are then just 1 Magicka piece. The Groff Dart with the, again, 1 piece. You'll notice another thing here, by the way. Both of those are light, and all of my armor pieces are light. I'm in 7 light here. To a lot of people, that's really weird, but light has really good cost reduction, and it scales super nice with your harness or dampen, whichever you go with. I got this idea from a guy called Dusk. He's a really, really strong PCU player. He's mainly sorc at the moment. He was always someone like, even pre 1.5, he was the one person, even on my Magic Nightblade, we would always stalemate. He's an exceptionally skilled player. It really is nice. I didn't really think about it in the past. It's super nice. I promise you it's worth trying. We're then running 5 Necro. So these are on all of the body pieces. It wouldn't matter whether you swap this onto your jewelry and move your other set up there, as long as your swords remain the same. That's going to give us, obviously, when our pets are active, a big, big chunk of Magicka, which is going to increase our damage, increase our shields, etc., etc. We're then running with a Master Ice Staff on the back, and this is infused. That glyph on there is really good for sustain. It's not a bad bit of extra damage. It's going to be hitting about anywhere between about 900 and 1.4k on a player, so it's pretty tasty. But that sustain is really good. That's worth about 300 mag regen in combat, so I personally have been using that on a lot of characters. I've even swapped it on my DK sometimes. It's a good trait. But the reason we're running this is it reduces the cost of our destructive touch by 30% and increases the direct damage of it by 2000. So it's making our life cheaper and it's increasing burst. You could also, if you don't have this, run an Elegant Ice Staff infused there, which is our other 5-piece set. It's going to give you the Magicka, so it's not a wasted piece that way. But I think that the reach is, sorry, the Master Ice Staff is definitely worth it there if you can get it. Front bar then is now dual wield. So this is a dual wield and distro build. Again, I'll explain all of that when we get onto the skills. We're running with 5 Elegant on the jewelry. Again, if you don't have gold, it doesn't matter. Just get it purple. You could also get Necro gold rings if you have those. So like I said, swap it accordingly. And those glyphs are Magic Recovery, reduce spell cost. You could get away with dropping one of the 3 of those sustain glyphs, especially in a duel scenario. It won't be a problem. Open world, I still think it's not a problem, but I like to over sustain because I'm generally trying to kite pretty large groups, and it's nice for getting around. But you could definitely afford to drop one of those. It's pretty over sustained to a point, but it doesn't matter because your one-shot capability is there on literally anybody anyway. We're then running that with swords. So as with the previous build on the shock launcher, if you haven't seen that gank, I suggest watching that just to get an idea of why we're using this. We're running with Nernhoned and Sharpened. Quite honestly, the glyphs there barely matter. You could run any glyph on those. It's probably not going to proc. This glyph will proc, but these probably not. On a rare occasion, if someone's in melee, you might get the light attack off to get that spell damage. And in a desperate scenario, but it's very unlikely, you could heavy attack, which is why I've gone with stamina return. Because if I'm heavy attacking for stamina return, it's going to give me that little bit of extra. And that back will obviously only proc on a heavy attack. So Elegant is going to give us spell damage, Magicka, and increase your light and heavy attack damage by 20%. We're using that for our ultimate. I'll get onto that in a sec, but that is the only reason that Elegant is there. It is definitely worth it. It's really, really valuable. Our skills then, or should I do that? Maybe not. I'll show you the stats first. So the stats on this build are as follows. We are, without any buffs, 2.5k spell damage with our spell damage buff, and our Magicka is 49.2k, 49.1k, sorry, but on the overload bar we do get a bit more. We go up to 52.2k, and our Mag regen is varying. On our front bar it's going to be 2k, on our back bar it's going to be 2.1k, and that's down to an ultimate choice that we have. Again, if you wanted to run a different ultimate there, it's entirely feasible. I only cast Overload as my ultimate, so essentially my back ulti is just there passively. You could run Meteor for Magicka and maybe you'll cast it. You could run Barrier for regen, whatever, who cares. Health 23k. We might have Emp right now actually. Yeah, we have Emp. That's normally about 21.4, give or take. And Stamina 11k. Now our Stamina regen is really low, but we're going to get around that in a sec with our potions, so it doesn't actually matter. Yeah, it's not really a problem. I promise you it's sustainable, even with a couple of roll dodges, by using your CP and all of that properly. Crit chance is 32%, but on the overload bar, again, we're going to be running Mage Light, so it's going to be up to our 42% mark, which is a decent amount. And crit resist is 2k, which is lovely jubbly. All right, skills. I'll tell you the skills, explain roughly why they're there, and then explain the combo. If you don't understand this, watch me on the live stream or wait for the 1vx video. It's not a simple combo, but once you've mastered it, it is ridiculously brutal. So, on our front bar, we are running Ball of Lightning. You could run Streak here as well. I'm generally trying not to CC outside of my Scamp. So for me personally, I prefer Ball of Lightning. I actually think that Streak is, in the case of this build, the more defensive ulti than Ball of Lightning, even though this is doing no damage really. But I like this for blocking off Soul Strikes and Meteors in a 1vx scenario. If you've got people chasing you and pooping out ultimates, it's really nice to absorb those. I think it's pretty helpful open world. I'm then running Endless Fury. That's going to be our execute. Big boy damage, really helps on the burst. Hardened Ward. This is an enormous shield because of how much Magicka we have and our CP and all. So 10.8k, the tooltip on there. It's pretty tasty, and it's going to be even more on our overload bar. I think about 11.5, give or take there. And then we are running both the pets. So, Volatile Familiar. If you don't understand a pet build, hear me out. Volatile Familiar has a pulse. So when we cast that again, you'll see it in a sec, you'll see him start doing this pulse here. It's a pretty large AoE. It hits really hard. And then on the 5th pulse, he's going to stun the opponent. That stun is obviously preemptive because we're casting it and waiting for it to arrive, and that's why it's going to work in the build. Again, I'll explain when it arrives. Our second pet then is going to be Twilight. This is there to support the original pet, but more importantly, this is going to be our heal for when our shields are suffering, when our pet's dying or whatever, because we're not running a resto staff. So it's actually a really reliable heal. There are situations where you may lose your pets open world. You just have to learn how to resummon them. It's very, very possible, especially in this build, to get them up. It's really not that hard, and a lot of people cause a lot of drama about that. I promise you it's easy enough to do. Back bar then is going to be our Ice Staff. So we are running Daedric Prey. This is going to be our buff for our pets, as well as a big stack in our main burst damage. Big ass tooltip on there, 11.2k unbuffed. And that obviously is going to carry to the jewel bar, where it's going to be even more, because all of our burst comes on the jewel bar. Once it's on there, naturally it's going to give you more damage. We're then going to be running Frost Reach. So the reason I've gone for a Frost Staff over a Fire or Lightning, and I'm certain this is the correct choice, is, well, there's more than one reason. Firstly, Fire and Lightning are both going to CC your opponent. I mentioned before, when I go onto the combo, you really want your Scamp to be the CC. If it's anything else, it's not necessarily great news, because if it's anything else than your Scamp, you're not going to be able to really time this burst so well. It's going to be a bit predictable, but with the Scamp, it's very difficult to avoid. The other really nice thing about Frost Reach in this build is if we were to lose a pet, or if we're getting chased by a build in heavy armor that's really snary, we've got a lot of control over our opponents, and we're really easily to get it up. Say we're against a Nightblade, he's here. If I Frost Reach him, if he's not got a gap closer, or he's not quick with a gap closer, I can quite easily resummon my pet here. Say I'm against a heavy armor Stam Decay. If I root him, he's not got Shuffle. If he's not got full momentum, well, frankly, he's never going to even attack us, because if he roll dodges, 2 seconds later, I'm going to root him again. So we get a lot of control over our opponent, and it's not even important to our burst. This is just there to support and give some general pressure. Quite often you're going to get kills with it, because the tooltip is still not bad, especially once you've got your buffs up. But it's not essential in terms of damage. It's more there to support yourself. Harness on the back bar. If you're comfortable with one shield, you could drop this off and put Surge there for the spell damage buff, and move Lightning Form onto the Overload bar. I currently have Power Surge on my Overload bar and don't have Lightning Form, but Lightning Form is really helpful in terms of kiting. If you've got another skill you like, you could also run that, of course. I personally like the double shields. I think that it's pretty valuable, but it's not the end of the world if you don't have a second shield. I think you can get around it because of the shield size. The other thing to mention is that Hardened is the only shield that goes to your pets. So if I show you here, if I cast Harness, my pets get no shield. If I cast Harden, my pets get a shield. It's a nice way to keep them alive and save you the hassle of resummoning. And again, on the back bar, because they are toggles, we have the pets. I've already explained those. It doesn't matter which bar you cast these on, by the way. You would get slightly more heal if you cast the Twilight on this bar. Not the end of the world. But the Volatile is going to be irrelevant, because it's going to be damaging based on the bar you're on at that time. So let's imagine I cast it on this bar, swap to this bar, I'm going to be getting the dual damage. Last but not least is Overload. Overload is the bread and butter of this build. It's going to be our kill potential. It's going to be storage for our pets again. But yeah, it's really there for the burst. Truly invaluable. So, Overload. On our Overload bar, we have Power Surge. It's where we're going to get our major sorcery. Because of our shield size, it's pretty easy to transition. Like, you're in a fight, shield, cast. Oh dear, my Hardened's down. Hardened on the Overload bar, and Surge while you're there. It's pretty easy to keep it up on the Overload bar once you practice. To start with, it might be a bit clunky. I couldn't do it to start with either. It definitely needs some practice. Mage Light is going to be there for the crit, the Magicka, all of that extra damage in our burst combo. We're running Hardened Ward for the big shield again, just in case we get caught on this bar without a shield. And then running the pets because they have to be there, otherwise they desummon. The combo. Have I missed anything else? I want to do a combo last. I have. Food. We're going to be running the Clockwork Citrus Fillet. So this is going to give us max Magicka, health, health recovery. But that doesn't matter. We are a vamp in the case of this build. And magic recovery. It's mostly there for sustain. To be honest, again, if you're really experienced on a sorc, you maybe could get away with just changing the reduced cost to recovery and then dropping that food for tri-food. It might genuinely be possible, and then you open all sorts of other options like Dark Deal, etc. I'm not a big fan of Dark Deal personally. I don't really like that playstyle. There's certain builds that will pick that to shreds, especially with pets. I'm not a fan, but each to their own. Our pots, I got a lot of pots on here, but the one that we're going to be using is this one here. This is really important for the build in my opinion. I think that it really changed the way it plays. So this is going to have stealth detection. That's really going to help with Nightblades who are just hiding around. You've not got anything to pull them out apart from the pets sometimes. Bit of a nightmare, so having to detect is pretty handy. It's going to give us Magicka for our added sustain, but more importantly it's going to give us immunity to CC, and that's going to help us manage our stamina on that low pool. Just take my word on it. You can test it yourself if you really like, but I promise you, you're going to be able to sustain your stamina if you use those pots on this stamina pool, unless you do something disastrously wrong like mass block, mass roll dodge, or whatever. Last things before I go on to the combo, the CP. So CP, 61 in Warlord for our CC break, 37 in Sprinter. Again, I like to kite. In the future, I might find a way to get lightning form on there. Maybe, who knows? If that's the case, it's even more valuable to have that there. It's just generally pretty handy. I mean, you are going to sprint. It scales really well, and you've got a lot of spare points here. 76 in Arcanist. I've stacked this heavy because there's not much in the green tree that's that important in the case of this build. The stamina recovery is a waste of points. We're never heavy attacking. We don't need that. Health recovery is irrelevant. Siphoner, that's just ridiculous. Bash, yeah, I mean, none of this is really useful. So we can stack that really heavy. And then 56 into Tumbling for our roll dodge. Make it nice and cheap. You could put more in roll dodge. You could put some in block if you really think you're going to do that. I don't really do either of those much. So at the moment, I prefer it in Sprinter. I might make minor change to it. Of course, you can make minor changes. That's up to you. Blue Tree. 61 in Elfborn. Now, if you didn't know the Shocker Launcher, it's going to be very, very similar to that. It's not the end of the world if you change it from there. 61 in Elfborn. 49 into Elemental Expert. 39 into Spell Pen. We're sort of dumping into there because it's pretty helpful. Note that your Spell Pen does not increase your pet damage. A common misconception. Pets, I have tested this. You can test it yourself. Pets are not getting any damage from your Spell Pen. But our main combo will. So it's still worth stacking that pretty heavy. 61 in Master Arms for direct damage. And then 20 of Thaumaturge. This is going to increase your pet damage. It's going to increase the dot on your Frost. So I'll explain that. Red Tree finally. 56 in Ironclad. That's going to be for direct damage. 6 spare points into crit resist. If you find a way to get 75 points in here, it is worth it. That does proc on shields, that heal. It's pretty nice. But it's really not the end of the world. You're going to be pretty tanky anyway, and I personally prefer having the CP elsewhere, but again, adjust it as you like. 37 Hardy, 37 Element Defender, and 28 Thick-Skinned. So this is the one time where I change from my standard 44, 37, 32 setup that I run on most of my classes in terms of CP. Because in the case of pet builds, your shields are big, you're getting a really nice percentage in Bastion. So stack it heavy, 66. You could even go as high as 73 if you really want, though I think 66 is worth it. Something that I saw in the chat that's worth mentioning here. Someone mentioned why I run with, where is it? Why I run with 76 here rather than 75. 75 rounds down. So if you didn't know this with your CP, if you're 14%, 14.1%, let's say it says 14.1%, that doesn't give you 14.1% regen. It gives you 14% regen currently. Maybe they'll change it in the future. Who knows? But if you have 14.00%, that is not giving you 14%. And that's true for every single tree. I've put millions of gold into testing how the CP works. It's not worth it because it will round down to 13%. The reason this is, and there is apparently an add-on that shows this, I was reading up about it, is apparently when it says 14.00%, what that actually is 13.9999999, etc., etc. And because the system always rounds down, it's going to be 13%, so you need 76 points in there. There you go. Right. Have I missed anything apart from the combo? Oh, one other thing worth mentioning. I currently run Harness here. I might be experimenting with Dampen there as well, because Dampen is going to be a massive shield. In 7 Light, it's going to be like 14, 15k shield. It's going to be huge. It's definitely worth considering. Again, you have the other skill options. And of course, if you want to change anything, feel free. The other thing I didn't mention was Barrier. Barrier is there simply for passive regen from this passive here. Your Magicka recovery is increased by 10% for each support ability slotted. We're not going to cast ulti, we're only casting Overload. Okay, enough about that. Let's get on to the combo, because that's what you guys want to see. I don't know if I have anyone to show this on. Probably not, and I could arrange it, but I think it's going to be hassle. If you don't take my word on it, that's fine. Just wait for the 1vx video. Watch me on stream. I've explained it a fair bit. But just to give you the breakdown. What we're going to do is imagine our opponent is this guard here. We're going to set our pet onto him. Now, if you don't know how to do that, you want to go Escape, Controls, scroll down until you find Command Pet. Set your bind for that. In my case, it's Y. And then to command your pet to go towards an enemy, you press Y and left click. To call it back, you want to go Y and right click. I have no idea if you can or how you can on the console, so my apologies, any console players. Once our pet's on them, we're going to press 4 for the pulse. That pulse is then going to do its dot. Now, instantly after that, we need to do 2 other casts. You can either go for shields. You could go for, in my case, I often go reach, reach, or reach, shield. It doesn't matter what you do in that time, but you want to either defend or use your reach. And then you want to put your curse on. So pulse, 2 of any cast, up to you whether you need to be defensive or aggressive at the time. Then you want to go for reach. Then you want to go for curse. It's important that curse comes on at that time because it's going to stack really beautifully then. Not the end of the world if not, but it would be better if you do. After that, you've got a couple of choices. You're either then going to go for 2 casts and then Fury. So we might go, again, reach, reach, Fury. Or you could go for 3 casts, then Fury. Again, I know this is complicated as fuck, but I promise you it's worth it. So when we do those 3 casts, it's going to mean that our Fury is landing just before our main burst connects. Whatever it is, again, doesn't matter. If you're aggressive, use reach. If you're not, use the shield. Those are the 2 things you want to cast. You don't want to cast any other skill there at all. I guess you could streak, not the end of the world. Just make sure you're not casting your curse again or your scamp again. Those are the ones you don't want to cast. After 3 casts and then Fury, or 2 casts then Fury, you're going to go onto your overload bar. You're going to cast overload, and then you're going to go overload if you did 2 casts and another overload, and your burst will connect. Or you're going to go with overload and your burst will connect. I've got someone volunteering to show me. Brilliant. Nice. All right. I'm going to give you a representation of how this works because otherwise it's going to be pretty complicated. I'm going to go to the North Oridon Shrine, Ben, if that's all right. The point is, when we're doing this burst, we're trying to stack in the same game tick a pulse, curse, fury, and the overload. And the overload hits hard as hell. And all the while, Twilight is going to get 2 attacks in there because it hits pretty fast. Yeah, so we're going to show you exactly how this works on a really tanky target. Ben is about as tanky as he gets on the Templar. He's going to stay on full health, and even on that full health, it's a possibility to get a one-shot. Keep in mind that obviously during that burst, you need to make sure you're getting your surge on. It is obviously back bud on your overload. So in a scenario where you have a medium amount of control, you're not under pressure, you're not in big trouble, that's a good chance to swap bar, get your power surge on, and swap back off the overload bar and get control again. That way you're just going to keep your buff up. But it is the more difficult bit of the build to use. Again, if you're happy with 1 shield, you could drop harness off for that combo and then put another skill back bar. I like having the 2 shields, but yeah. 2 seconds. Ben is on the way. He's grouping. Good. He's going to travel to us, and then I'm going to give you a representation of this burst on a player. And again, I know I've said it a billion times, it's a bit set up, but if you want to see a burst actually done in an action scenario, patience. I always get told you haven't shown video of this footage. A video always comes out for my builds, guys, be it before or afterwards, and I always live stream the builds. It will come out. I just need time to make it and get all the clips because I've only been playing this build for a few days. But I can't see a way of improving it right now, to be honest with you. Ben's crashed. Nice. Not a good start. I'm trying to think of what else I can mention here. I did mention... Oh, I know something. I did forget. That was lucky. So I am using Vamp here. I'm also using the Mage. You could use Apprentice. It's going to give you about 300 more overload damage. But I much prefer having the Magicka. It's so close to the same damage. It's going to give you more resources to work with. But more importantly, it's going to increase your shield size for you and your pets. Again, it's just trying to keep the pets defended. It's not the end world if they are desummoned. It's not great news, but you've got a lot of ways to resummon them. You can kite, you can use a reach and just move away from them. It's pretty easy to avoid the bash, to be honest. There are certain builds that it can be tough against, especially against a really good player, but generally speaking, you should be all right, especially if you practice sort of shielding your pet in the middle of the fight and turning offense on. The more offense you keep on your opponent, the better. All right, we actually got 2 opponents because I see Jack here. So Jack's trying to hide, but we're going to demonstrate on him as well. We'll quickly turn to stay full health. All right, so here is our opponent. We're going to call our pet back. We've just met our opponent in Cyrodiil. What we're going to do first, we're going to put our pet on him. Imagine we're shielded. We're then going to go Light Attack Pulse, Light Attack Reach, Light Attack Reach, Light Attack Curse, Light Attack Reach, Light Attack Reach, Light Attack Reach Swap, Fury, Overload, and everything connects just there. Now, if we do that in the combo that I prefer, which is double Overload, and this will give you slightly more burst, but a little harder to do, we are going to go with, this time we're going to put Surge up, Light Attack Pulse, Light Attack Reach, Light Attack Reach, Light Attack Curse, Light Attack Reach, Light Attack Reach Swap, Fury, Overload, and now everything connects right by there. And that's the combo I think is better. So 2 Curse, 2. You can do it with 3. It's a little safer to do it with 3 because it's going to mean you're going into your overload bar definitely shielded, but your burst potential is going to be slightly reduced. His scratch as well. I know he's with the stream. Maybe he's happy to show it. I just want to show